Tonight, a former CIA officer joins us to discuss the turmoil in the National Security Council that after President Trump fires an intelligence chief simply because he warned Congress about Russian meddling in our elections. Then, we're going to check in on the race for the White House as Democrats prepare for tomorrow's Nevada caucuses. Bernie Sanders, he's heading into Nevada, leading in the polls. The big question is, can Bernie now be stopped? Also, as we keep seeing a rise in hate and anti-Semitism, tonight we remind you about a time when more than 20,000 people jam-packed Madison Square Garden for a Nazi rally. We're going to show you the Academy Award nominating documentary about that unbelievable event. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and we begin tonight with yet another shakeup at the White House, and this time in President Trump's national security team. Once again, it is all about Russia and that country's meddling in our elections. With the 2020 election underway, so are Russian efforts to once again interfere in U.S. politics. And once again, the president claiming
it's disinformation.
At a campaign rally railing against the warnings given to a bipartisan group of House lawmakers last week.
They said today that Putin wants to be sure that Trump gets elected. Here we go again.
Sources confirming that intelligence officials had warned the House Intelligence Committee that Russia is planning to use social media to spread disinformation in support of President Trump to bolster his re-election. Earlier Friday, the president tweeting out, "Another misinformation campaign is being launched by Democrats, hoax number 7. But it wasn't Democrats who said that Russia was meddling again. It was his own national intelligence director. The president, angry, sources say, that the information was shared with a committee led by Adam Schiff. That the Democrat who also led the impeachment proceedings in the House, because the president believes that the Democrats would use that information from the briefing against him, but that committee is the one with oversight of the DNI. Adam Schiff tweeting, "He is again jeopardizing our efforts to stop foreign meddling, exactly as we warned he would do." In response to the briefing, President Trump shaking up the Intelligence Committee, dismissing acting director of national intelligence Joseph Maguire, even though he was set to step down next month, and he's replacing him with a staunch Trump loyalist, and elevating a former NSC official and author of a congressional report attempting to discredit the Russia investigation as 2 other top intelligence officials departed the agency. Lots of national security experts, they are very concerned about what's going on. Former Defense Secretary and CIA Director Leon Panetta, he's one of them.
The Russians are continuing to interfere in our election process. They did it in 2016, they did it in 2018, and they're doing it in 2020. They are going to be encouraged by what the president did, that somehow they have a license to be able to continue to interfere in our election. They're going to be encouraged by this.
And unbelievably, it gets even worse. Congress, they're not doing anything to deal with this crisis, a crisis they know full well has happened and is happening as we speak. Now, you can also blame directly the Senate Republicans for that. They just blocked 3 separate election security bills that have already passed in the House. The measures, they would require campaigns to alert the FBI if foreign interference is detected, and also provide more money to shore up the system against hackers. This is about the integrity of our elections. But they were DOA once they hit the Republican-led Senate. Senator McConnell not even bringing them up for a floor vote. I want to bring in our first guest here tonight to discuss former CIA officer Jack Rice. Jack, as baldly put, Maguire was shown the door because he not only told the truth, but he did the stated objective of a DNI, which is to talk about threats to our nation. And he was directly terminated as a consequence, and not just him, but obviously some of his key lieutenants as well. It's not more complicated than the motivations to get rid of him, but my God, how chilling a statement is that as to where we are in 2020.
I so agree with you. What we look at and what's going on right now is this. What's most important from the intelligence community, and always has been, is that they simply tell you what the facts are. They simply tell you what's going on. Now, you can make policy decisions, meaning those people in those positions, like the president, can make policy decisions based upon the information that they have. But they're not there to be yes people. They're not there to tell the president what the president wants to hear. I've been thinking about this a lot, really, for the last couple of years, Richard, and this is really what comes to mind. There's a misquote in history, and that misquote is that what the CEO of GM once said was, "What's good for GM is good for America." That's actually not what he said. If you look it up, what he said was, "What's good for America is good for GM." The problem is that this president has heard the misquote and believes it. What he thinks, truly thinks, is what's good for Donald Trump is good for America. The problem is this is not about that. And his job is not to make sure that he's okay. It's not to make sure that he gets the most votes or the electorate follows him. His job is to defend this country. And it's about the facts and then making the right decisions based upon those facts, not because you don't like them, but because they are what they are.
And I want to talk about the various consequences out of this, but you said it, and I just want to repeat again, because there's this misperception in this bizarro window of time that we're in, that somehow it's his intel department, just like it's his Justice Department. Our taxpayer dollars, Jack, yours, mine, and everybody watching at home, we pay for, among other things, to be able to have an impartial justice system in this country and to have the best intelligence apparatus that protects we the people. So that if there is a threat, foreign or domestic, they're going to go through people we elect, tell them about the threat, and then they're going to have to make a determination along with the president and Congress what to do about it. Again, not a new threat, but a foreign enemy is attempting actively to interfere with our elections. But for people who minimize that somehow, I don't know why, but maybe some do, what if they said, hey, listen, Russia's encroaching along the Ukrainian border again? The president might find that to be adverse to his re-election prospects, and he wouldn't want that shared with Congress? I find myself like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but that's literally what we're talking about here. The president fired the DNI, the acting DNI, because he reported facts that were against his political self-interest. So now you get this guy Grenell in here. What do we think is the message he's going to send to the rank and file? If this doesn't help my guy come November, I don't want to hear it. I don't want Congress being told. And as a consequence, I don't want the American public being told about threats to our national security. And somehow I've got a political party in this country that's going to go along to get along. It is nuts.
We have never seen anything like this. We simply haven't. When this president was running for office, what he said, and he said this very clearly and over again, I will get the best and the brightest. And so he chose person after person with decades and decades of experience, some of whom I agreed with, some of whom I disagreed with, but I certainly honored their service. What we have seen is droves of them being fired, not because they weren't competent, not because they weren't capable, but specifically because of this very same reason. They decided to tell the president the truth. The problem is the blowback, the cost, is not going to be paid by Donald Trump. Not really. Because the blowback that's coming is something that's going to be coming maybe this week, maybe this month, but this could happen in a year, 5 years, 10 years or more. But it's not Donald Trump who's going to be dying on a battlefield. It's not going to be Donald Trump who's going to be dying in a city somewhere in the world because he happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time or is targeted specifically because he's an American. In fact, it's going to be American citizens, American soldiers, American airmen, American diplomats, and American business people who are going to pay the price because this president has decided that his self-interest is above the national interest and will only listen to the statements that are being made that are consistent what he believes in his head based upon something he may have read somewhere, something he may have heard from somebody who may have actually planted that in the first place, instead of listening to the professionals who have been doing this for not just decades, but for president after president, for Republicans, for Democrats, and anybody who happens to be at the helm. They serve the country.
You know, Jack, sometimes I think people make the mistake when these things happen to think of it theoretical, but the DNI, for people who don't know, and you've forgotten more about this than I'll ever know but the idea was that it was a kind of a fulcrum, that all the different intelligence agencies are going to be reporting into here. More than it being a central clearinghouse, so we wouldn't have siloed information that would be, with separate fiefdoms and little squabbles, they wouldn't share it. We learned after 9/11, we got to share this intelligence to do the best we can to protect the American people. So now, with what the president did, I got to think, and tell me I'm wrong, that if I'm going to Paris or I'm going to Berlin, I'm going to every world capital to our allies right now, they're going to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to share intel with these guys. First of all, it might get buried. I don't know what I'm going to get in return. We have made America less safe by what happened yesterday, reconfirming that our first priority is to look out for Putin. We might not get information that'll help protect Americans going forward because our allies can't trust us anymore, and we're doing our damnedest in the last 3 years to keep reinforcing that message. It's not hyperbole, is it, what I'm saying?
No, it's not. And it's actually worse if you think about it. And you looked at the hearings involving the impeachment process. And what you found was there is now a side current, a side approach to national security. So what we have is you can have an ambassador in a country who simply doesn't know what's going on. That is the focal point. That is the person at the forefront and really represents the country in that country, whether it's in Dubai, whether it's in Berlin, whether it's in Afghanistan. I mean, that's simply the case. But now what you're seeing is an undercutting of that process. And what's even worse now is you realize that there are people who give their lives for the intelligence that's being provided to the United States. And I want to say that piece again. There are people who are sacrificing their lives, sacrificing their families in order for intelligence to become something that's relevant and useful to policymakers in the United States. Now, they've always, to some degree, said, well, I'm going to go this path or I'm going to go that path and make this a policy decision or that. But what we're seeing now is a full-throated denial of the objective facts that exist. What it does is undercut our diplomatic service worldwide. It undercuts, honestly, our ability to control and, dare I say this, manipulate the world to the benefit of the United States. It undercuts the intelligence community completely because what we know is, regardless of the truth, the president will actually see it as a negative. He will actually see it as being disloyal and, in fact, could go the other direction because he simply doesn't like it. But if you talk to the people on the ground, in the field, in the trenches, they will tell you again and again, this is where we are. And this is actually happening. And this isn't something you can turn around because if they go a different direction, they don't come back. That's our problem.
And up next, more with Jack, including the former CIA officer debunking that Republican narrative that President Trump has been tough on Russia.